Hello everyone, and welcome to this segment of our board candidate video series. And on this segment, we're going to be focusing on school law basics that board candidates need to know. And joining me for that discussion is Kelly Hopkins. Kelly is Associate Executive Director for Board Services and Corporate Counsel for Missouri School Boards Association. Kelly, thanks a lot for joining us.
Great to be here.
And first of all, Kelly, let's talk about the legal authority that board members have. Individual board members versus the board as a whole. Do individual board members have legal authority?
Unlike some of the elected officers in Missouri, such as the governor, which has powers given to the governor by Constitution and statute, school board members individually don't have any. They are part of an elected body, and their authority rests in their working with the rest of that elected body. So outside of the board, no board member has individual authority.
One of the laws, Kelly, that our board candidates need to be aware of, should they be elected in April, is the Sunshine Law. Tell us about that.
The Sunshine Law is huge for school boards and, quite frankly, all political subdivisions and the meetings that they hold. The Sunshine Law, really called the Missouri Open Meetings and Records Act, is the law that says that the public has the right to see how the district does business, and that means attending board meetings and watching the board make their decisions. It also means having access to the records that are maintained by the school district, so they can request records. The Sunshine Law has some exceptions where board members can meet in closed session to make decisions, but for the most part, everything a school board does is scrutinized by the public.
Mm-hmm. And that may be a little different situation than a lot of our board members are used to. Maybe some of them may be business people from the private sector or are not really used to operating in public, but that's very important, isn't it?
That's correct. This is a public entity, a political subdivision of the state of Missouri, and they are subject to the scrutiny of the public.
Mm-hmm. But there is some business that can be conducted in closed session by school boards, is that right?
Yes, there are some specific exemptions that allow school board members to do work in closed session, and these are written for very particular reasons. For instance, you wouldn't want to talk about an employee was having health issues and needed to take leave in open session, and so the Sunshine Law permits you to talk about that in closed session. There are some other things that can be discussed in closed session as well, such as the negotiation of contracts. If you're going to negotiate a contract, it doesn't give you much negotiating power if you make all your decisions in open session, if the people you're negotiating with can be there. So you're allowed to do that in closed session. However, a lot of what's done in closed session eventually becomes available to the public.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about those discussions in closed session, Kelly? Can board members walk out of the room and talk about those issues?
No, they can't. No, it is very important that once elected to the board and once a part of that board, that all the board members respect the confidentiality of the closed session. The purpose of a closed session is to allow every board member to speak honestly so that the board can make good decisions. If someone on the board is sharing what is said in that closed session, board members won't speak up. They won't share honestly, and the board won't make as good a decision.
Mm-hmm. What about laws related to conflicts of interest? Kelly, how do they impact school board members?
This is something else that board members or potential board members really need to think about. There are several laws dealing with a board member's family, the board member, or a business with which the board member is associated from doing business with the school district. So if elected to the board, some board members who may own businesses may no longer be able to do business with the board. And if they do business with the board and the school district, they may have to submit to bidding. There are going to be restrictions on how much business they can do to the district. And we are, quite frankly, board members are often surprised by how limiting their ability to function in their business life is once they start to serve on the board.
Mm-hmm. What about laws related to discrimination? What do board members need to know about that?
One of the most important things that boards do is they help make hiring decisions. In the MSBA philosophy, boards actually hire a superintendent, and the superintendent hires the rest of the people who work in the district. However, legally, the board is the hiring authority and does have to vote to employ all persons in the district. And when that obligation is thrust on the board, so are the laws pertaining to discrimination. You can't not hire someone because of a protected characteristic such as religion, race, age. And I know right now those potential board candidates are saying, I would never discriminate against someone on that basis. And I understand that's true, but discrimination can be subtle. For instance, if the board were making a really tough decision about having to lay off an employee because of budget cuts, and one of the employees was of retirement age, and a board member said, well, this is the logical employee to lay off because they're eligible for retirement, so they wouldn't suffer as much economically. The truth is, that's just code for age discrimination, and that's not what the board member meant. But it is something that board members have to be keenly aware of.
Speaking of hiring decisions, Kelly, what about the issue of nepotism? What do board members need to know about that?
The law says that a board member cannot vote to hire or appoint a relative within the fourth degree. And within the fourth degree is a lot of relatives. And this is not only the fourth degree of the board member, it's the fourth degree of the board member's spouse as well. So it's the board member's brother, the board member's spouse's brother. It's the board member's grandmother, the board member's spouse's grandmother, etc. There are lots of relatives related within the fourth degree, and school board members have to be very careful because there's no cure for nepotism. Once it's committed, it's done. So board members need to be very much aware of who their relatives are and be very careful about what they're voting on.
But that doesn't mean, Kelly, that a board member couldn't have a spouse that is employed, say, as a teacher in the school district. That happens fairly commonly.
Actually, it does. A board member can have people who work for the district, and the district can hire relatives of the board member. The board member just can't vote for them. Now, I would add that there are also some conflict of interest rules dealing with spouses who work for the district and some limitations on what board members can say and do to encourage the hiring of a family member or someone who already works for the district.
When issues come up like this, Kelly, say nepotism or conflicts of interest, one of the options for a board member, if they're concerned about those issues, is simply to abstain from the vote. Is that right?
That's correct. That is the proper way to handle it, is to abstain from the vote because they feel like it's a potential conflict or because it is nepotism. Now, our policy recommendation is to really avoid nepotism and conflict of interest. Not only do you abstain from the vote, you get up and leave the room so that your fellow board members can continue the discussion honestly and openly without your scrutiny.
So can school board members be employees of the school district at the same time?
They cannot be employees and school board members. That's another thing that comes up more often than you might think, because often the candidates who run for school board are already volunteering or working in additional jobs at the school district. For instance, they might keep the clock at the basketball game, those sorts of things, because they already want to be involved with the district. Well, once you're on the board, you don't get to keep the clock anymore. You cannot substitute teach, you cannot substitute drive a bus. You lose the ability to do those things because you cannot receive compensation from the district as long as you're serving on the board.
Can board members hold other elective offices at the same time?
Yes and no. There are some offices that are considered incompatible with serving on the Board of Education for a school district and serving in that office. For example, a county commissioner. A county commissioner may be part of appointing board members when there are more than 2 vacancies on the Board of Education. So if you were on the Board of Education and a county commissioner, your positions would be incompatible. So it's a case-by-case thing. If any of the candidates have questions about what offices are incompatible, we'll give them our best guess, and if we actually know the answer, because it's been addressed by the Missouri Ethics Commission, the Attorney General, or a court, we'll tell them.
So Kelly, we've covered just a few of the legal issues related to school board service here in our video, but we conduct a much more comprehensive overview of school law issues during our board training that our board members would be taking should they be elected. So there's a lot more to it than we've covered here, isn't there?
There is a lot more to it. We focus a lot of our board training on the legal aspects of being a school board member. And of course, that's one of the benefits of being an MSBA member, is to be able to have that, to be able to contact us regarding some of those legal aspects and the questions regarding them. But yes, we will cover this in great depth. This was just a primer.
All right, Kelly Hopkins, thank you so much for being with us on this segment of our board candidate video on school law basics. And we thank you for joining us as well on this segment of our board candidate video series.